A little bit about me. My name is Nick Magato. I'm the Business Development and Military Contract Manager here at Gearwash. And I'm out of our Dayton, Ohio location. I've been with Minerva and now Gearwash since 2021. Previous to that, I served in public safety from dispatch to corrections to fire and EMS, just about 20 years. So, but enough about me. We'll go ahead and get started with this presentation. So first off, we're going to kind of just go over some definitions for 1851 and just kind of elaborate a little bit on that. So as the 2020 edition, is what we're talking about here. So ensemble elements, when we talk about ensemble elements, we're talking about your PPE and PPE accessories like your helmet, boots, gloves, hood, things like that. Those are your ensemble elements. Organization can refer to a fire department, as well as a manufacturer trained organization. That'd be a fire department trained by the manufacturer. Verified organization would be a company that's verified, or a fire department that's verified by a third party. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Preliminary exposure reduction, you're probably familiar with this term by now. It replaced what was called gross decon in the previous edition. So now it's called preliminary exposure reduction. Sanitizer, just talking about, whether it be a process or a chemical that sanitizes the gear. Cleaning facility, when we talk about cleaning facility, we're talking about we talk about an ISP, an independent service provider, or a company that just cleans fire gear that's verified. So same thing, verified independent service provider would be like Gearwash, a company that provides these types of services. Contamination would be anything obviously on the garment that's from the products of combustion, things like that. Disinfectant, would be a chemical used to disinfect the gear. Soiling, we talk about would be like something like blood, sweat, things like that. Advanced cleaning would be your machine washing, and then specialized cleaning, which would be anything above that requires soaking or extra scrubbing, things like that. And we'll get more into that as we move on. So one thing to note about 1851, 1851 really does play hand in hand with NFPA 1971. So 1971 is, the standard that to what your gear is made. So it defines, elements like, thermal protection, tear resistance, things like that. The thing to keep in mind, especially with 1971, there's not a single gear manufacturer out there that's making gear to the bare minimum 1971 standards. So, it's everything is over-engineered past 1971 standards. So, but like I said, 1971 does go kind of hand in hand with 1851. So 1971 is how the gear is made, 1851 is how the gear is cared for. So we're going to talk about the FAST report, fluorescent aerosol screening test that was funded by the IAFF. So IAFF did a study a few years back and basically had a firefighter suit up. They placed him in this chamber, filled it with this aerosol, fluorescent aerosol, to kind of show you the limitations of your gear. And, obviously our PPE is not meant to protect us from everything. It's obvious it's not a Tyvek suit or, anything like that. So there are weak points in the gear. And as you can see here from this photo, this is around the head and neck area. So you can see your hood is really probably the weakest link in the ensemble as it sits right now. Obviously with particulate blocking hoods, the technology is getting a little bit better, that you're not having as much infiltration. But just from these photos here, should be enough to show you why it's important to do preliminary exposure reduction, to use those wipes on the fire grounds, take a shower afterwards, things like that. So moving along to the torso and arms here, same deal. You can see here in the after pictures, where your gear interfaces with your pants. There's a infiltration spot there, where the coat interfaces with the hood, where the coat interfaces with the gloves. These are all weak points as it sits in your gear, and why it's important to again, why those preliminary or those habits after the call are important. Same thing with the legs here. I think these are the most telling photos. You can really get a good grasp of where the boot line is, and you can see there's a lot of infiltration up the leg into the groin area. So there's a reason why male firefighters experience testicular cancer at a greater rate than the normal public. This could be one of those attributions to that. So again, this is why it's important that we're making those small little changes after the calls, right? So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. So you have in this photo here, you have a piece of fine beach sand, you have a human hair follicle, and within that you have particles that are dust, mold, pollen, things like that. And even further within that is your particles of combustion. So again, this is why it's important that you take these after call hygiene steps seriously. We're obviously up against a very, very small enemy, but it's important. So, and as the slide says here, with every 5 degrees that your body goes up in temperature, your skin absorption rate increases as much as 400%. So, this is the stuff that's being absorbed into your body. So, definitely important to, like I said, do those after call hygiene steps. So moving along to programs here. So really, if your department doesn't have an SOP, SOG, that refers to 1851, you should really look into doing that. Because you want to make sure everybody's, working off the same sheet of music, right? So making sure that you have an SOP or SOG that addresses 1851, what you do in the case of, who does advanced cleanings, do you send this out, so on and so forth. It's important that you have something that addresses that. So the thing to think about is, departments can, do their own. Obviously, you should be doing inspections. The department should be doing routine inspections. Advanced inspections can be done by the department as long as they're trained to do so. Same thing, advanced cleanings. If you're not 100% clear on how to clean your gear, reach out to the manufacturer, reach out to your ISP, and we could come out and train you. It's unfortunately, with the materials and fabrics that we're using in fire gear these days, it's not as simple as doing their laundry at home. So, you got to make sure that you're cleaning these things properly. So, anything that needs advanced repairs. So advanced repairs would be really anything that is done to the moisture barrier, thermal lining, openings, closures, things like that. Really need to be conducted by the garment manufacturer, either a third-party verified fire department or a third-party verified ISP. So kind of give you a better idea of who could do what here. So the second to last column here is the end user, which is fire departments, right? So routine inspections, preliminary exposure reduction, that should all be done at the fire department level. Next to that, you see the manufacturer trained organization. So advanced inspections, complete liner inspections can be done. Again, as long as you're trained by the manufacturer at ISP. Same goes with advanced cleaning, sanitation, disinfection, specialized cleaning, and basic repairs. So basic repairs would be anything done to the to the outer shell, whether that be patching, restitching, things like that. As you can kind of see further along towards the front of there, you can see like advanced repairs, training for cleanings, all these types of things fall under, either the manufacturer or a verified ISP. So again, if you're unsure, reach out to your manufacturer, reach out to an ISP, and we can get you pointed in the right direction. So one of the biggest things, that to take home is record keeping, right? So just like an EMS, if it's not documented, it's never happened, right? So really, these are the things that you should take into consideration when you're documenting, your garments, who it's issued to, condition, things like that. Dates and findings on inspections, whether that be routine inspections, advanced cleanings, things like that. All this type of stuff really needs to be documented. And the reason being is ultimately at the end of the day, when let's say a firefighter gets hurt or even God forbid killed on the fire grounds, OSHA's going to come in and want to see, the records for those garments. So that's why it's important to make sure that you have all this stuff documented and all your ducks in a row. So moving on to inspections. So routine inspection. This is really where the rubber meets the road for the end user, for the the firefighter, right? So this should be done by every person upon issue, after every use, and the start of each duty day, right? We're looking for soiling, contamination, any burns, charring, things like that. This list of things is really what you want to be looking for. And if there's an issue, obviously reach out to your either your company officer or quartermaster. Maybe your stuff needs to come in for repair, so on and so forth. So very important that you're looking at all this stuff, especially every day. This is your armor, right, that you're going into battle with. So you want to make sure it's as put together as possible. So just a few photos here. I will always say, like, our our photos are always kind of on the extreme side. We see the worst of the worst. So, but it does help give you a good idea of what you're seeing here. So things to think about. So black gear is great in the sense that it really shows heat damage, UV damage, things like that very well. So as you can see in those yellow circles there, you have some heat damage over 500, 500, roughly about 500 degrees. And that's when the dye starts to run out in the black gear. So the black gear's dyed, starts to run out at 500 degrees. And the red circles there you can see is 700 plus degrees. And this is really the final stand of your gear. This is where, you should be trying to exit the structure, things like that. This is the end of the line for the gear. As you can see, it gets very charred, brittle almost. So, if you're involved in a high heat incident or a thermal incident like this, you want to make sure that you're very diligent in checking your gear. So on the reverse side, the sides that you don't necessarily think about, here's the moisture barrier. So moisture barrier is a membrane attached to a white or a textile, a fabric. And when you start to get to over 500 degrees, that moisture barrier membrane starts to separate from the fabric that it's attached to. So you can you see that there, and that's when damages start. And this is why it's important that you have your gear, after an incident like this, have it advanced inspected, because there could be hidden dangers in this area. So when we talk about advanced inspections, obviously these should be performed by either a verified ISP, a manufacturer trade organization, or the manufacturer themselves, annually. And then whenever a routine inspection determines that there's a potential problem. So as it sits right now with 1851, you should be performing an advanced inspection at least once every 12 months, okay? Unless there's, obviously a concern. So you need to make sure that you're documenting those findings, and, anything needs to be fixed, it should be taken out of service at that point in time and sent in to be fixed, right? So also when we talk about advanced inspections, we talk about the liner inspection, right? So complete liner inspection should be done annually as well, as part of the advanced inspection. Previously on the last edition of 1851, it had that you could wait 3 years for the new garments. They've changed that, so we're doing it annually now with the advanced inspection. So back here talking about areas of concern. So again, when you start getting to these high temperatures, you're going to start to see the breakdown of the moisture barrier. Your seam tape starts to melt, could start to attach to some of the batting from the thermal liner, things like that, and you're really starting to get what they call bruising as well. So on the thermal liner, you can see the damage there has been done, and these are really over 600 degrees. This extra padding here along the elbow really did help this firefighter from being burned seriously. So again, it's important after an incident like this that you're taking the time to look thoroughly through your gear. So in addition to all the items in the routine inspection, what we're doing on the advanced inspection is, checking the system fit, checking the material integrity, things like that, making sure the hook and loops are good to go. All this stuff is checked at the advanced inspection. So what exactly makes the advanced inspection advanced other than these items here? It's this machine right here. So this is your hydrostatic water pressure testing machine. And basically what we do is we put the moisture barrier in this machine, clamp it down, give it 1 pound of pressure for 15 seconds, and any presence of any moisture is a failure. Again, we're testing this every year, regardless of age. And when we test at least 6 areas, 3 areas involving material, just material itself, and then 3 areas involving a seam. So it's important that you get this done on an annual basis to make sure that your gear is up to snuff. And when you're doing your routine inspections, if you find anything that could cause for concern, you want to make sure that you point that out as well. So like I said before, what you're doing here is you're placing the fabric side down with the moisture barrier, the membrane side facing up. We're going to circle the area, with a date, and and mark any areas that have failures, and then that should be repaired after the fact. So when you talk about your complete liner inspection, again, this should be part of your annual advanced inspection, but you want to make sure that you're looking at the liner itself, making sure that there's no issues, no seam issues, things like that. As you can see from the photo here, this is right around where the air pack would sit. So obviously some heavy damage has been done there. Again, an extreme example, but nonetheless, it's good to be noted and make sure that this has been looked at. So switching gears here to our cleaning and decontamination. Um, when you're handling these elements after going on a call, you want to be making sure that you're wearing the proper PPE. All our associates at Gear Wash, at a minimum, are wearing rubber gloves, eye protection, apron, things like that when they're handling dirty gear. So make sure this is, again, part of your SOPs, SOGs. Make sure that you're not exposing your staff inadvertently by not providing the proper PPE for that. So, again, if you're exposed to certain chemicals, if you're those chemicals are known, one thing that 1851 does that has in the annex is a kind of a decision tree. And we'll go over that here in a second. That can kind of help you make those decisions of whether or not you need to, that this needs to be cleaned, or how to handle it after a certain contamination. And then another thing here, here at the end, obviously, if you have contaminated elements, you really should not be, if you're a volunteer, taking those home. You shouldn't be washing those at home or in public laundromats. And commercial dry cleaning is not to be used unless it's approved by the element manufacturer. So really, you should be keeping these contained at the fire department, the firehouse, or sending them out to your independent service provider or whoever washes your gear. You want to make sure that you're not spreading these contaminants around. So just like I was talking about a few minutes ago with the decision tree. So there's two different decision trees. This is the first one here. And basically, if you've been involved in certain incidences, it kind of points you in the right direction of what can be done, right? So obviously, if you've been involved in a CBRN terrorist incident, we're going to condemn that gear. Hazmat incident depends on what it's been exposed to. So especially with these hazmat incidences, you want to make sure, like, if you can get a copy of the SDS sheet, that'll help us or whoever that you're using as an independent service provider to clean this gear, help us determine whether or not it's cleanable and able to go back into service. And that's important. We get a lot of calls and emails about that of, hey, my gear was exposed to X. Do you think it could be cleaned? Sometimes it's just not possible. It's not safe for our associates to handle, or we're not going to be able to effectively remove that chemical. So that gear has to be basically condemned. So again, like I said, you want to make sure you have as much information as possible when making those decisions. So work with those hazmat teams or other people in the department to try to figure out the SDS sheets on the stuff that you've been exposed to. So this is the second, decision tree within 1851. Again, talks about some other contaminants here, and just kind of, puts you through the steps of where you need to go. So again, things to think about. This is all in the annex of 1851. So when you talk about cleaning levels, you have three cleaning levels essentially: your preliminary exposure reduction, which was formerly your gross decon, your advanced cleaning, which is machine washing, and then a specialized cleaning, which is soaking, scrubbing, things like that. So really, if your department does not have an SOP, SOG talking about preliminary exposure reduction, you need to make considerations of doing that. Again, this is going to be one of the best things to do for your firefighters to help prevent, reduce their risks of cancer. Basically, even if you do nothing other than just wet the gear down itself, you're lowering airborne contaminants by 85%. So, gold standard should be to use a soft bristle brush, some soap. When the firefighter comes out of the structure, they should remain on air and start the preliminary exposure reduction process, right? Any of those firefighters that are low on air should be really fast tracked, and those should be the first ones tackled, right? So they should be scrubbed down, rinsed off, and this is really going to help reduce those contaminants over time. Bag up that gear after you're done. If you're done on the scene, bag it up, put it in a different compartment of the vehicle, and take it back to the department for washing. So, so when you're talking about preliminary exposure reduction, you have dry mitigation, wet mitigation. Wet mitigation is obviously your gold standard. Obviously in areas that have colder temperatures, especially this time of year, dry mitigation might be the best thing to do. Basically, you're just using a soft bristle brush to remove debris from the exterior, things like that. But again, like I said, you want to make sure that you're bagging up your elements, and while I'm at it here talking about bagging up your elements, really invest the extra few cents it takes to purchase clear trash bags. Reason being, well, in the past, we've heard of departments that they bag up their gear in black trash bags. It gets mistaken for trash back at the firehouse and thrown out. So it could be a very costly mistake. So making sure that you bag up your gear with clear trash bags is important. Again, like I said, you want to be transporting this in your vehicle that doesn't have any, not in the passenger areas, as best as possible. Try to fit it in the side compartments until you get back to the station. So when we talk about advanced cleaning, advanced cleaning should be either done by the manufacturer who's been verified in cleaning, a verified cleaner, a manufacturer trade organization, a verified organization, or verified ISP. It's important that, when you're washing your gear, you're doing it appropriately, evaluating it if it's been exposed to certain chemicals or contaminants, knowing what to do or what not to do with that at the time. So, and as the standard sits right now, garments should be, or your gear should be at least advanced cleaned once every 6 months. And during one of those times should be during your annual inspection. So you don't respond to a whole lot of fires, things, no fires at all, things like that. You still should be washing your gear at least twice a year. So what do you do with this? You want to make sure that you're using, a gear extractor if your department has that. Reason being is, and especially a gear extractor that's been programmed properly for 1851. There's certain things in the standard that we're going to go over here that, definitely you want to make sure that are programmed into your machine if possible. So top-loading washing machines are not permitted to be used by the standard. Reason being, especially those with agitators, reason being is A, they don't get the gear clean as well as it should, and B, especially with the agitators, it can damage the gear over time. So you really want to be using a front-loading washer. Gold standard here is to use a programmable extractor. So G-forces should not exceed 100 Gs. Again, this should be something that's pre-programmed into your extractor. If you're not sure, always reach out to your, extractor salesperson and see what they can figure out on that end. Just to kind of give you a reference, your residential washing machines, G-forces are somewhere in the realm of 200 to 400 Gs. So things to think about. More G-forces on it, possibility of damage. So when you're talking about detergents, the standard doesn't really say, hey, this detergent is approved or this is approved or whatever. It just talks about a range of pH. So if you remember from your chemistry class years ago, 7 is neutral, which is water, right? So pH on a detergent should be no less than 6 and no greater than 10.5. And you want to be as close to neutral as possible. Obviously, you don't want it to be 7 because that's just pure water. That's not removing the contaminants, but You want to be as close to neutral as possible. So where you can find that information is if you're looking at detergents, look at the SDS sheet. I believe it's section number 9, has it broken down of the pH level. So talking about chlorine bleach or chlorinated solvents, if you're using these chlorine bleach or anything like that, and I know a lot of departments out there, at least some when I was in the fire department, would use their extractors to clean, whether it be mop heads or towels, things like that. You really should, refrain from doing that. Cleaning the gear in the extractor should be the only thing done in that extractor. That's the ultimate situation. With chlorine, bleach, or any chlorine, for a matter of fact, Kevlar's natural enemy is chlorine. So as it, as it's exposed to chlorine, it's going to eat at that, which is gives your gear its strength. So it's important to make sure that if you're using a chlorine product as part of a solution mixture attached to your extractor, that you reevaluate that, and our recommendation would be to discontinue that. So again, you don't want to make sure that the gear, your extractor is overloaded or underloaded. It should be about halfway full. If you're only washing one set of gear, maybe designate some towels that you can put in their extractor to help. Because really the way that the extractor works is it, basically grinds the material against itself to kind of push that soap into the material to remove the contaminants. So you need to be, have the extractor needs to have the proper amount of elements in it to make sure that it functions properly. So again, trying to maybe add some towels. You don't want to use those towels for anything else other than this because they're contaminated now. But again, trying to use some towels if you're only washing one set or something like that. So, and then water temperature should not exceed 105. So your standard everyday washes should be no greater than 105 Fahrenheit. There is an exception to this rule, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But you want to make sure that your everyday washings is no greater than 105. So you want to do any pre-treatment for anything that's heavily soiled or spotted areas. And then this is a big one, folks. All the closers should be fastened. So as we'll talk about, you want to wash liners with liners, outer shells with outer shells. As the outer shell goes into the machine, you really should put it in as what it would look like if you're wearing it, right? All the Velcro's secure, all the closures are secure, things like that. Reason being is one, the most repaired thing on gear is the Velcro, right? So if you have the Velcro exposed during the washing process, it's going to deteriorate it over time. Two, the hook side of that Velcro, it's essentially like sandpaper, right? So this is, again, going to be rubbing up against other materials in the washing machine and is going to damage the outer shell over time and cause issues. So really you need to be, like I said, putting in the outer shell just as if you were wearing it, right? So like I said before, you want to separate outer shells from liners. You want to wash them separately. You want to make sure that when you're washing liners, you want to make sure that you're inverting the liner, making sure that the quilted portion is facing the drum of the machine. Reason being, well, you have your moisture barrier and your thermal liner, right? And the moisture barrier's sole purpose in life is to prevent moisture from penetrating and going from one side to the other. So if you have your moisture barrier against the drum of the machine, the water is not going to be coming out of the thermal liner. This is going to cause damage over time. You're going to have extended times for drying, things like that. So really, take the little bit of time it takes to invert that liner to make sure that you're washing it properly. So DRDs are allowed to be, remain in the gear as long as they're secured. If you want to remove them and launder them separately, they can be either done with the outer shell or liner in a separate mesh bag. And then, obviously you should be removing any ladder belts, things like that, fall protection, before you put that into the extractor. So just like I was talking about before with the improper washing over time. So again, this is an extreme example, but you can see here, damage over time that has caused these areas to blow out. And if you notice in all three pictures, the seams are intact. It's just right past the seam is where this blows out. So over time, that water is in there. It's going to spin around at, roughly around 100 Gs. Over time, that's going to take its toll on the fabric and cause those issues. So again, another important reason why you should be inverting your liner. So specialized cleaning, when you find that advanced cleaning, or sanitation, or disinfection is inadequate, this is where this kind of comes into play. If your gear has been exposed to biocontamination or blood, bed bugs, things like that, this is where you can wash it at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. But again, you don't want to wash everyday gear at 140 degrees. So, if this stuff isn't working, you could always reach out to the gear manufacturer at ISP. You really want to make sure that we know as much as possible what was your gear exposed to, what contaminants, what substances, things like that, and that's going to help us or your ISP make a determination of whether or not it's salvageable or it needs to be condemned. So when we talk about storage, when you're storing the gear, you want to make sure that you're not exposing it to UV rays, fluorescent lighting, direct sunlight, indirect sunlight. I've been to a few departments that have these really beautiful glass bay doors, right? And then they have all their gear hanging up in the bay. And as the sun rises and sets, it hits, it basically goes through those glass doors and hits the gear, and you can tell because it's usually black gear that has a lot of coloring problems with it, right? Well, it's important that you're protecting your gear from UV rays, whether that be you put the gear in a separate room, or you have lockers, or even with the gear grid, type setups, they make stuff to cover the gear itself. So you want to make sure that you do that, not only because of UV rays, but also because of diesel fumes. Diesel fumes are a carcinogen as well. So especially if you store your gear in the bay, you're going to be exposed to diesel fumes. So when you're storing your gear, you want to make sure it's clean and dry as possible. Make sure the area that you're storing it in is clean, dry, and well ventilated. You don't want to be putting any storage gear into airtight containers. There's obviously a little bit of moisture that's going to retain in that gear, and being in those things that could cause mold, other things like that. If your department does not have the signs to restrict where bunker gear or your gear can go, get those, put those up. You shouldn't be taking any of this stuff into the living quarters, right? It should all remain out either in the gear room, in the bay, something along those lines. Okay. So when we talk about retirement, I think everybody's pretty much familiar with this rule. Obviously, you need to come up with a specific criteria for removal of elements from service, whether it be the 10-year rule or, it doesn't make sense to repair the gear, things like that. It's just not cost effective. This is all should be stuff that's in your SOPs, SOGs. Like we talked about before, if it's exposed to CBRN, needs to be retired immediately, so. And then the other thing to think about is, people ask, well, what about helmets, boots, gloves, things like that? Straight from the standard itself, structural firefighting ensembles and ensemble elements, meaning boots, gloves, helmets, so on, shall be retired in accordance with the standard no more than 10 years from the date of manufacture. So those leather helmets, boots, things like that, do adhere to the 10-year rule as well. So things to think about. When you're talking about disposition of retired elements, you want to make sure, when you retire elements, either you destroy it in a fashion that it can't be used for any emergency, or if it's still serviceable, you can use it for training as long as it doesn't involve live fire. And that's provided that is appropriately marked as being for non-live fire training only. So you really want to make sure if you have 10 plus gear, if you have EMS only people that respond to car accidents, that's a suitable use for it. Training, explorers, things like that. But as long as it doesn't involve live fire training. And just like what I was talking about before, so this is also in the annex of 1851. So this is for one of our customers that we built out for them. But this kind of gives you this chart gives you an idea of whether or not it's cost effective to repair or use that money to move towards purchasing a new garment. So as you can see, your first few years is when you should be investing more money into it because it has lots of shelf life left. As you start getting into the later years, you want to be putting less money into that. Now, obviously, this is up to the department's discretion. We've had some departments that are investing in year 8 or 9, high dollar amount of repairs because their gear manufacturer is taking a year to get get gear out. So again, it's up to your department, but this is again what we recommend, and it does make for a good gold standard. So with that, we'll answer any questions here. So we did have some questions sent prior to the webinar. Let me pull those up here. So the first question is, I have an extra set of turnout gear unopened and unworn. Can I still use it even if it's been 10 years? Or change it to pass the retirement timeline? So unfortunately, if it's after 10 years, yes, you can still use it as long as it's not for live fire activities. So like I said before, if it's past that 10-year rule, you want to make sure that, it's not something that's going to be out in the field, okay? And then another one is, can I have 2 of my guys trained on basic repairs and inspections, or do we always need to be sending the gear into an ISP? Yes, you could have your guys trained on basic repairs and inspections. Either your gear manufacturer can take care of that, or a verified ISP can take care of that. We do here at Gear Wash basic repair class on demand. It's done here in Dayton, so the things to consider is travel to Dayton, and there is a cost associated with that. So if your department is interested in a basic repairs class, something like that, or more in-depth inspection class, just get a hold of us and we would be more than happy to help you. So let's see here. So we have in the chat here, so the disinfectant, what if it only reduces a pH of 10.75? Is there any programming that could be done to the washer? So unfortunately, no. a 10.75 does fall without, fall out of the 10.5, obviously, pH level. So you may want to consider, looking at a different disinfectant, or not using a disinfectant at all. So. Yes, again, my email address. If you have any questions outside of the webinar, or any concerns, by all means, reach out to me. Okay, so we have another one here. Have you heard of any new type of closures on the horizon for bunker gear? We all know Velcro does not last. We have switched to D-rings and zippers. So I do know Lion does have a model out that uses magnets. I believe that is exclusive to Lion, that closure. So as far as any other manufacturer, I'm not 100% sure I've seen anything other than the Hook D and the zippers. Like I said, the Lion's magnetic ones, I believe, they have them for the main closure, for the fly, and also the pockets as well. So, do we have any more questions? Let's see. Do the top-loaded washers not meet the standard for advanced cleaning or general cleaning as well? So top-loaded washers are actually specifically talked about in the standard itself, and they're actually prohibited. So if the reason being they're prohibited is they have found that top-loading washers, whether with or without agitators, just do not clean the gear effectively. If it has an agitator, then obviously it does cause damage eventually to the gear itself. So so that's why that they're prohibited through the standard. So. Any more questions? Yeah, so can we talk about CO2 cleaning? Certainly. So CO2 cleaning, there's a few companies that do that. And really, when you talk about CO2 cleaning, it's really about, I'd say, risk and reward. So as far as CO2 cleaning goes, it can be quite expensive to get that done. It does remove a lot of your contaminants, but again, if you're using, you're setting in gear that's, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, does it make sense to invest that amount of money to do it? So it can be quite expensive. It's over $100 just to clean it using CO2, depending on the company. So, it's a viable option, but I think as technology grows, I think it might be more readily available. But like I said, as it sits right now, you really got to determine risk versus reward on the cost part of that. So I can give you an example from a department that I've serviced here in the local Cincinnati area. They had a gear that was 2 years old, was exposed to a lot of different chemicals and such like that from a junkyard fire, and we were able to provide CO2 cleaning for them. It did help. It was very much was able to bring back the gear back to spec, but then again, it still had a lot of life on it. So making sure that like I said, you evaluate your risk versus reward. So so does Gear Wash sell a detergent for the fire decks gear? So unfortunately, we do not sell detergents anymore. We used to. We just didn't have enough market for that, so we discontinued that line. But again, as far as detergents go, you really just need to research and look and see what pH levels are and things like that. So let's see here. Which gear wash location is your biggest branch or outfit? So that would be our New York location in the Bronx. Does all of them provide the same service? Does it make sense to send it to certain ones? So yes, just about all our locations have similar do similar services, whether it be repairs, alterations, advanced cleanings, all that's done at any location. The only one that's different right now is we do offer CO2 cleaning through our Denver location, but any of our locations could help work that, get you set up with that. So, do we have a list of recommended detergents available? Not at this time. That could be something that we do work on, but again, like I said, you really want to be looking for a detergent that's specifically made for fire gear, for one, and then it falls within that pH level designated by the standard. Is there a certain type of brand of disinfectant we can use? I was advised many years ago that we can use 3M disinfectant, the same stuff used to disinfect our air packs. As far as recommendations go, I mean, we really can't make any recommendations. As far as disinfectants go, there's quite a few out there. You just want to make sure that the disinfectant that you are using is being able to be used for fabric, right? So, there's a EPA label on all disinfectants, and it should tell you what what it's certified to be used on. So, what changes, if any, may be coming with the update in the standard? So, as far as changes go for end users, it doesn't seem as really there's not a whole lot of changes from my understanding from the conversations I've heard. I do know, so one of the things with third-party verification, this is specific to independent service providers like GearWash, but currently as it sits with the standard, we have to show a 50% removal rate for contaminants on the gear. I do believe they're going to up that, whether it be 60 or 70%. I'm not 100% sure, but that does seem to be the biggest change coming down the pipeline, I think. But again, if you're interested in 1851, go on the NFPA website and you could look at and even join in as a guest to those meetings and get firsthand knowledge on what exactly is changing with the standards. So. The 3M's ONS is called gear wash. Don't use it on gear. Not exactly sure what you're referring to, Zach. So do we have any other questions? All right, well, I think that's it, everybody. I appreciate your time. And thank you for coming to coming to our webinar. Again, if you have any information or if you have any questions that you'd like to ask after the webinar, please be sure to reach out. Be more than happy to answer those questions. All right. Thanks, everybody.